Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is probably the best Pokemon game I've ever played. Now, I was a fan of Pokemon initially when it first came out so many years ago. I loved the original 150, and then after that they ended up adding like the dark type Pokemon, and then after that when they added like fairy types and all that other garbage, I just kind of lost interest. I'll admit that over time my patience for video games has also gone down exponentially, and so I'm not the biggest fan of turn-based combat or JRPGs. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet ended up having auto battles where you could literally send your Pokemon out and then the game would decide based on their weakness and based on their level whether or not your Pokemon would one-shot the enemy Pokemon or the other enemy Pokemon would end up one-shotting yours. Top that with the fact there is no longer any random encounters, you just see all of the Pokemon that you're about to face, which also makes it a lot more exciting for capturing them because you know what you're investing your time into. But the main reason I played this game in the first place, because it has multiplayer. I wasn't really expecting to enjoy this game as much as I did, but I played it through in its entirety and I ended up catching some of the hardest Pokemon to get in the game. I haven't been able to do the super strong raids though, because that is just way too big brain for me. See, the main gimmick of this Pokemon game is Terra battles, where a Pokemon of a certain elemental type will terrorize into another random type. So you could have a ghost type Pokemon that would terrorize into a lightning type Pokemon, which means that in order for you to successfully defeat this Pokemon, you have to prepare yourself so that you don't take damage from its ghost type attacks, but you also don't want to take damage from its lightning attacks, and you also want to have its weakness. Like, it hurts my head. That said, thankfully, the main campaign of the game you can get through relatively easily by having a full group of level 70 Pokemon. Except for some of the last battles in the game. Those are like genuinely hard. Oh, and I didn't even talk about the fact that this game is open world. However, there is a very, very lengthy and boring tutorial at the beginning. So it's gonna take you around, let's say, 2 hours before you unlock your first Pokemon Center, even skipping the dialogue, and then you can end up going into multiplayer. And then it's probably gonna take you another hour or two to go into the main town so you can unlock your vehicle Pokemon, and then you have free range to explore anywhere that you want. And the main game has 3 primary objectives. There's going to be Titans, which as you defeat them, your vehicle Pokemon will gain different abilities like flight or climbing up walls. Gym Leaders, which as you defeat them, you'll be able to control Pokemon at higher levels. So you can't catch a level 50 Pokemon and use it efficiently unless you've defeated enough gyms. And then there's the Gang Leaders, which I honestly forget what key element of the game that you earn from that. And once you've done all of that, you can rush into Area 0, which was extremely disappointing. It's the Endgame area, so it's got some very rare Pokemon, but only like maybe a handful of them are even unique and new to the area. Now, even once you're done with the main campaign, that's not all. You could capture every single Pokemon in the game. Yes, capture all 400 of them, not just fight them. And then you'll end up getting a shiny medallion thing that will boost your rates of getting a shiny. Now, a shiny is just a rare color variant of a normal Pokemon. You can find them out in the wild, but there's also going to end up being these outbreaks where you can find them at an increased spawn rate. Like, here's me farming for a shiny Magikarp, which I did end up getting without any of the items that end up boosting my rates or anything. It took like 2 or 3 hours, but I got my shiny Magikarp so that I could level it up and evolve it into my shiny red Gyarados. But there was still some parts of the game that I just couldn't stand. Like, I still hate the JRPG aspect of this game. For what Pokemon Scarlet and Violet do correctly, it still is clinging on to these really dated old game mechanics. Like look at how long it's taking before I can throw a Pokeball at this stupid snake. Like, oh my god, now I can finally throw it. With all of that said, this game isn't perfect, but it's darn near impossible to not recommend it to any Pokemon fan. The fact that I'm not particularly fond of these types of games, and yet it still kept my attention for well over 30 hours, is something worth mentioning. So if you were ever interested in playing this game, I could highly recommend it. I don't think you'll regret it. But as far as a review score, I guess I would say it's a 3 out of 5 for me. It's not that the game is bad in any way, shape, or form. It's just that for me, personally, as a reviewer, this is not my favorite genre of video game. And I don't think this game would have been nearly as entertaining for me if I didn't have people to play it with in co-op. My only complaint is that I don't really like the new Pokemon because like look at this. It's a keychain. That's not a Pokemon, it's a keychain. It's something like, what's the next Pokemon gonna be? A flashlight?